Welcome, focused learners, to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey straight into the absolute core of chess mastery, the tactical playbook. We're going to decode the final, decisive moments of the game by looking at the most critical checkmate patterns every single player needs to know. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned player looking to sharpen your visual recognition, this explainer is designed to systematically upgrade exactly how you see the board.
Okay, let's dive into this. 36. That's right, 36 distinct checkmate patterns we are going to extract from our source material and completely master today. In chess, success isn't just about calculating 20 moves ahead. It's about instantly recognizing visual patterns. When you burn these 36 configurations into your mind, you stop guessing and you start executing.
So here's our game plan for today. 1. Fast and fatal mates. 2. Trapped by your own army. 3. The deadly dynamic duos. 4. Geometric traps and shapes. And 5. Historic masterpieces and sacrifices.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Fast and Fatal Mates, the quickest ways to lose.
Now, these really highlight the incredibly high stakes of pattern recognition right from the opening moves. I mean, if you aren't paying attention, the game can literally be over before it even really begins. As you'll see here, we're breaking down the somewhat embarrassing reality of these lightning-fast mates. Over on the left, we've got the infamous fool's mate. Guys, this is literally the fastest mate in chess, happening in just 2 moves. By playing f6 and g5, Black carelessly opens up their king's absolute weakest diagonal. This just allows the white queen to swoop right into h5 for an instant kill. Poof, game over. Now, contrast that with the scholar's mate on the right. This one's a classic 4-move trap, super common in beginner games, where the bishop and queen team up to immediately target that weak f7 pawn. While it's definitely risky to bring your queen out this early, knowing this pattern is an absolute must in your chess journey.
And hey, speaking of essential early patterns, we have the kiss of death. This is a super elementary mate where the queen gets right up in the enemy king's face, positioning itself on d7 to deliver a fatal blow, all while being perfectly supported by its own king. It's actually one of the very first mates we ever learned, and honestly, it serves as a perfect foundational building block as we transition into some of the more complex, claustrophobic traps.
Moving right along to Section 2, Trapped by Your Own Army, Betrayal on the Board.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how we can compare 2 variations of claustrophobic traps that highlight a kind of tragic irony in chess. It's how a player's own uncoordinated pieces can actually become their absolute worst enemy. On one side, we've got the corridor mate. Here, the king is literally trapped in the straight corridor because enemy rooks are completely dominating the B and D files. That allows the queen to just casually invade the C file and eliminate any possibility of survival. Brutal, right? On the flip side, we have the diagonal corridor mate. It's a very similar concept, but performed by bishops or a queen, where the king is trapped on a diagonal. And the real kicker here? The king's escape is often blocked by its very own pieces. In fact, this whole concept of betrayal gives us several fantastic variations. Think of them almost like tiny narratives, where a king is suffocated by its own royal guard. We have the famous back rank mate, where a king is trapped on a last rank entirely by its own pawns, which just invites a rook or queen to invade the 8th rank. Then there's the smothered mate. This is where the king is completely surrounded by an uncoordinated team, 0 escape squares, and a lone enemy knight just hops in to deliver the fatal blow. We also see the smothering mate. Similar name, slightly different vibe, where a bishop traps the king on g8 while a knight finishes the job. And finally, Lolly's mate, which involves this very specific pawn structure that allows a queen to invade h6 and then g7 to smother the king with pawn or bishop support.
So, all of this self-destruction naturally begs a pretty important question. What actually happens when pieces work as a perfect team, instead of stumbling all over each other and trapping their own king?
Well, that brings us to Section 3, the deadly dynamic duos, synergistic attacks.
This is exactly where we explore how minor and major pieces pair up to orchestrate completely unstoppable, synergistic combinations. Because, as the old saying goes, teamwork makes the dream work. In chess, when 2 pieces perfectly cover each other's blind spots, they become an absolute nightmare for the opponent.
Let's see how this builds, starting with a classic, the ladder mate. Just look at these steps. You use 2 rooks, or maybe a queen and a rook, and you basically just apply sequential checks. You are literally pushing the opposing king rank by rank, or file by file, forcing a retreat until there's simply no way out and he falls off the edge of the board. The visual imagery here is just perfect. It's exactly like your pieces are climbing step by step up a ladder to force that win. Now, beyond the heavy pieces, we have some really specific historical pairings. The Arabian mate, for example, is one of the oldest in the entire history of chess. It uses a rook on h7 to attack, while a knight defends it and expertly covers the escape. Then you've got Greco's mate, a classic from Gioacchino Greco, where a rook on h1 mates with the help of a bishop. The hook mate uses a rook supported by a defending knight, forming a shape that literally resembles a hook. And Boden's mate? That one requires some beautiful sacrifices to open diagonals so two crossing bishops can attack the king simultaneously. So the crucial point is that mastering these specific pairs, whether it's the ancient Arabian or Boden's crossing bishops, is really all about learning how two distinct pieces can permanently lock down every single escape square.
Let's move on to Section 4, Geometric Traps and Shapes. Visualizing destruction.
So this is the point where tactical mastery meets visual memory. Abstract board patterns actually form highly memorable physical shapes, making them incredibly easy to recall in the heat of a match. Take, for instance, the blind swine mate. By definition, this happens when your rooks invade the 7th rank and just start moving horizontally. They completely cut off the enemy king, giving absolutely no chance of survival.
I absolutely love how our source material describes this one. It says, the rooks cause a huge mess. Quote, like pigs that destroy everything without seeing what's ahead. I mean, how great is that? That evocative, aggressive description perfectly captures the abstract horizontal movement of those rooks. It makes it a shape and a concept that you definitely won't easily forget.
And the shapes don't stop there. We've got 4 more beautifully named geometric traps here. The dovetail mate occurs when the king is blocked by 2 pawns, visually resembling the trace of a swallow's tail. Then the epaulette mate happens when the king is trapped right between 2 pieces of its own army, looking exactly like those fancy military shoulder epaulettes. The balestra mate features a queen trapping the king while a bishop attacks on the diagonal, kind of like a medieval crossbow arrow. And the triangle mate is, well, exactly what it sounds like, a queen, a rook, and a pawn forming a literal triangle of doom on the board. Trust me, tying these fantastic shape-based names to their geometric realities on the board is a massive shortcut for your tactical memory.
Which brings us to our final act, Section 5, Historic Masterpieces and Sacrifices. Legends of the Game.
We've reached our climax here, folks, looking at the legendary, history-making games that produce patterns players still rigorously study today. And these mates, they carry the names of the game's greatest legends. We have the opera's mate, born from Paul Morphy's incredible sacrifices during the famous opera game, ending with a bishop defending a rook on d8. There's Anderson's mate, inspired by Adolf Anderson, utilizing a rook on h8 with just perfect team coordination. Reddy's mate, honoring Richard Reddy, features a super powerful bishop giving mate on d8 while defended by a rook on d1. And Pillsbury's mate uses a rook on g1 and a bishop to brutally exploit an open castle. And this brilliantly illustrates how legendary figures didn't just win, right? They used incredible sacrifices and absolute precision to etch their literal names into the geometry of chess history.
Let's look at one final comparison to really show the sheer range of these historic masterpieces. Over on the left, the David and Goliath mate. This recalls the famous biblical story, where a single, heroic pawn advances to h4 to deliver the final blow against a trapped king. It's this humble, quiet victory. But contrast that with Legal's mate on the right. No way! This is pure flashy brilliance. A surprising early sacrifice of the most powerful piece on the board, the queen, followed by a devastating, highly coordinated attack by a knight and bishop while the enemy king is just totally exposed in the center. But hey, whether it's humble pawns or sacrificed queens, the ultimate goal remains the exact same.
So we've explored everything from the humiliating 2-move fool's mate, through the suffocating betrayal of the smothered mate, all the way to the historic brilliance of Paul Morphy. You've seen how pieces synergize, how they form inescapable geometric shapes, and how pattern recognition is truly the ultimate weapon on the board. So I leave you with this final thought. With these 36 legendary patterns now locked into your tactical playbook, which one will you absolutely unleash in your next game? Keep visualizing the board, and I'll see you in the next explainer.